What's up, Weirdo Swarm? You are listening to Podagon Infinity, the podcast that opens the door to all things King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. If you're a regular listener of our show, welcome back once again. We appreciate you being here and following along with us. And if you are brand new to the show, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a fun time with us today. I think this is going to be a fun, interesting little episode away from our usual album discussions. And by the way, if you don't know already, my name is Joe.
And my name is Spenser. Yeah, Joe, different format than we usually do. For those of you newer listeners who are listening in, first of all, glad you found us. Thank you for tuning in. We do mostly album discussions on this podcast, though we do deviate from the norm a little bit. Frankly, we should be doing that a little more down the road as we've kind of run most of the catalog already. But we're kind of taking things a different direction today because we have a couple of fun topics that we want to get to, a couple of timely topics, we should say, one of which is the upcoming RAVE tour, and also a little bit orchestral tour and rock tour as well, coming up in the UK and Europe and the band's native Australia. So everything that's going on in the King Gizz world, we're going to kind of hit on that today. As for what's coming up in the next couple of months,
yeah, we are stoked to see what happens on this upcoming leg of the tour. This has been a big year for shows, everything from all the US shows and Field of Vision, the Europe residencies, and then now going into this RAVE tour and more orchestral shows, and finally them getting back to their homeland and doing shows in Australia is really exciting to see. Because the RAVE tour thing has never been done before, that's going to be kind of the main focus of our discussion with regards to these live shows, because I think there's a lot of speculation and kind of hopes and predictions that we are going to have a lot of fun giving for that. But on top of all the tour discussion, because this is our last episode before Halloween, we really wanted to do a little something that was kind of on theme with that. So later on in the episode, we are going to chat about what we believe are King Gizz's spookiest or most eerie songs. Think of it as sort of us like building a Halloween party playlist of sorts, but with only the band's music. You know, what songs, whether it's the sound of them or the eerie, weird, creepy lyrics that exist in some of their music, what ones would fit the best? Yeah, right. Cough, cough, paper mache. Oh, there's definitely some of that in there. But that's going to be fun to discuss as well. So make sure you stick around after this whole tour segment and enjoy that discussion with us as well later on. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, before we go any further on the show, we want to jump into a listener email. Peter from Sweden emailed in once again. Thank you for reaching out again, Peter. Peter says, "Hi again, Joe and Spenser. I'm so happy you're continuing your great work with the podcast. Just like Gizzard's music, it's helped me through some really tough times. I had a few thoughts related to some of your more recent episodes and would love to hear what you think. First," Peter says, "like you, I was initially a bit disappointed that Phantom Island didn't seem to have a clear theme, though I quickly fell in love with the music itself. However, I've come across the idea that it might, chronically through the album, actually revolve around fear of death, and rebirth. After re-listening without having time to study the lyrics too closely, that interpretation seems possible to me. What's your take?" So pausing the email, reading here, that's the first of three kind of sections that Peter has in the email. So approaching that one, as far as the themes found in Phantom Island, as far as like the fear of death and rebirth, fear of death I definitely get in the lyrics from especially the first two tracks, the title track Phantom Island, and certainly on Dead Stick with the whole plane crash thing going on in that one, and as well as perhaps a little bit in Lonely Cosmos, especially in Cookie's verse. And as far as rebirth, I think that takes place a little more later on in the album, or I guess in the middle of the album too, with Panpsych, which definitely has some some tough to parse, but some really lighthearted, beautiful, kind of spiritual, deeper meaning to it. And then Grow Wings and Fly, the album closer, that like kind of hits you right in the face, like that's all about rebirth and reinvention. Was any thoughts, agreements, disagreements on those, Joe?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting way of looking at the album, and I'll be totally honest here, I did not take enough time to read through the lyrics and really give like specific details and thoughts as far as my perspective on all that, but that's all making sense to me. There seem to be a lot of clear themes about the singer's family and loved ones and like always wanting to be there for them, and one of the songs in particular that stands out to me would definitely be Eternal Return. I think that might fit along with that sort of rebirth theme a lot, describing to their loved ones, the singers, whoever's perspective this is supposed to be from, but talking to their significant other, their partner, wife, whatever, and their children of like, I'll always be back, I'll always be home for you. And that's interesting that could be read from the perspective of like if something terrible did happen, like the landing dead stick and crashing, and you don't actually, you don't make it, you don't live through it, that maybe that's almost like a spiritual thing of like, don't worry, I'll still always like be around, be watching over you kind of thing. So maybe that's how the sort of that whole element of like death and whatnot could revolve around there. But this is really interesting and something I'm definitely going to have in mind now when revisiting that album, and maybe I'll be able to come up with more specific, deeper thoughts on that in the future.
Okay, so the second observation that Peter makes here is regarding Les Risques. I completely agree that the most apparent interpretation is about the need to take chances in life. Still, I can't shake the feeling that it might actually be ironic, a warning against being too reckless. That line, "There's nothing quite like digging graves for fun," along with the dramatic end of the song, makes me wonder. To that, Peter, I say, absolutely. I don't think we really touched on this side or this interpretation of the song in our kind of deeper album discussion on B741. But I like the thought here because there are definitely some very over-the-top, like he said in Joey's verse, there's nothing quite like digging graves for fun, and just all these like themes of utter recklessness, and there is the kind of backdrop of the theme of, take risks in life, you're going to do some cool things, don't just sit on the sidelines, let life pass you by, have fun, take some risks here and there. But the song, on another hand, does certainly hint at some overt recklessness that can be very dangerous and in many cases quite deadly, quite literally within the lyrics.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think part of it is that sincere message of, take risks, don't be afraid to try new things and all that, but also like, the examples they give, like digging graves and doing dangerous shit and transcending and all these lyrics, it's like it takes it over the top to where it's too far, to where you could also totally interpret it as a warning of not going too hard, not going too crazy, but take a risk once in a while. You never know where, what good things might come from it.
Definitely. And finally, Peter says, as for witchcraft, clearly so important to the Petro storyline, I've started to think that the witches could represent scientists experimenting with climate engineering, spraying aerosols into the atmosphere to reflect sunlight. It's a technique that might help short term, but could be disastrous in the long run, e.g. worsening the negative effects of climate change. The lyrics even mention aerosols, which could be a direct reference, and he quotes, "a Bible burned with aerosol." So maybe the song is actually warning against taking such drastic measures to fight climate change. That is a really interesting perspective, and I actually put in my notes for my reaction, whoa, mind blown emoji. I mean, who's to say that there is that specific line with aerosol? I've always interpreted that as that aerosol just being a literal agent for ignition when the witches are burning the Bible to perform their incantations. But honestly, who the fuck's to say?
Yeah, that could also, a Bible burned with aerosol could also be like, using these aerosols and these scientific methods for trying to deal with climate change is literally like going against God and nature by like trying to mess with nature and control it. So burning the Bible is like a description of going against God and nature and trying to do all of this. That's really interesting. Thank you, Peter. I never thought about it that way before.
Peter concludes his email with, "I'm really looking forward to each new episode. Please keep up the amazing work." And also, P.S., I guess like many fans, I think of Omnium Gatherum as Gizzard's White Album. We had another listener actually say that.
Yeah.
Funny coincidence, both albums feature songs about someone named Sadie. Remember Sexy Sadie from the White Album? That totally passed me by. Ooh. I did not even notice that. Good poll, Peter. I think I mentioned on the Omnium episode, I just listened to the Beatles' White Album all the way through for the very first time shortly before we recorded that episode. So that's probably why that didn't stick with me. But yeah, good observation. Thank you so much, Peter.
If you would like to be like our good friend Peter here and get a hold of us and have some interesting thoughts or questions that we could read on the show, please reach out to us. You could do so via DM on any of our social media platforms, whether that be Facebook, Instagram, X, or Blue Sky. And you could also send us an email as well if you prefer that method, podagoninfinity@gmail.com. It's easy to remember. We're the only one out there, so that's us. So hit us up anytime, and we'll be happy to read your message on the show.
So now into the meat of the episode, which, as we mentioned at the top, we're going to be talking about the next leg of the Gizz 2025 tour, which they already did a couple legs of the tour, as we kind of alluded to earlier. They did the European residency kind of in the spring/early summer. They came here stateside for the orchestral tour, as well as the single rock show at Forest Hills that we are very privileged to be attending there, Joe. But on October 31st, Halloween, which we talked about the spooky aspect coming in later in this episode, very timely, that in fact the tour does resume for King Gizz on October 31st. So just looking at the overview of listed dates we have here on our shared document, 9 rave sets, 9 orchestra shows, and 4 rock shows coming across 22 total dates across 10 different countries. But all that being said, our focus is going to be more so on the rave portion of this tour, because that's largely uncharted territory for the band. It is worth mentioning they did what they literally billed as an experimental rave set last November in San Francisco on November the 6th. That, of course, is on the Bootleg Gizzard profile on the listening platform of your choice. I actually listen to that very frequently, and I love it so much. But there are certainly signs, especially earlier in the set, I think, that kind of hints at, okay, it's experimental. Emphasis on the word experimental. They're still kind of figuring things out as they go. They're learning as they go, and they're just continuing to build this into what they envision it to be kind of in the long run, Joe.
Yeah, that San Francisco set very much was experimental. I think that's good that they put that in the name, sort of hinting almost like, hey, we want to do more of this. We just want to make sure that it works out all right, and that we could kind of elevate this into a larger scale thing, a larger scale electronic show. And of course, they busted out the synth table. Nathan, by the way, if you don't know already, if you keep hearing us say Nathan, that is the nickname for the synth table when they wheel that bad boy out and do some electronic stuff, electronic sets during their shows. But yeah, I think because of that experimental show and because of, just the silver cord existing and them playing around with doing electronic stuff more frequently on stage, I think we should have been able to see something like this coming. I think this is really exciting that they are elevating this whole electronic thing into its own entire tour, basically. And obviously the mix of the rave shows and the orchestral and rock shows, they're kind of all blended together throughout these dates, throughout this big chunk of touring. It's not like they are separate tours. It's kind of a mix of all of that, which is like an organizing marvel that they were able to put that together and have all this crazy shit back and forth, one night doing a rave set in like a club and then, the next night performing with an orchestra. Like, it's just absolutely unbelievable the way they're able to pull this off. And I'm so excited to follow along. Just to make it clear as well, we will not be attending any of these shows. These are across the pond from us, with us being on the east coast of the States over here. I really wish I could have taken the extra time off and scrounged up the cash to make it happen, dude. But unfortunately not. And you know what? There's another band that I love that's also doing some shows around the UK at the same time. And I almost had the thought I could organize seeing both of these bands in London or Manchester or something, and kind of do a big week or two long trip to the UK, because I've wanted to do that for a while. I've never been to the British Isles at all, but yeah, unfortunately, not going to happen. It will one day, but I think it would be super cool to see them in another country sometime.
Yeah, that's on my bucket list as well, certainly. And so, glancing at the dates here, I mentioned that I have kind of the dates listed out on our shared document. Between October 31st, which is the first rave set, that is the first date of the resumption of the tour, and then all the way down to November 15th, which is actually the final rave set on the tour. It's going to be orchestra and rock shows the rest of the way after that one. They have an opportunity not only to continue developing their live performances of their existing electronic repertoire of songs like the Silver Chord, Butterfly 3000, and of course Intrasport, kind of the outlier from the KGLW era, but also to maybe play around and develop further with electronic arrangements of traditional rock arranged instrumentally, songs that are on other studio albums of theirs. Some notable examples being Slow Jam 1, which they did on the European residency, Synths, which we got to hear at Forest Hills, and also which appeared in the European residency as well. There are so many different directions they can take things, but before I start kind of getting into my theories, and I'm sure you probably have some of your kind of wish list items and thoughts on directions they may take it in. I want to first focus on the existing electronic songs that they have and what I think they still should touch on, in my opinion. For those who are unfamiliar, the Silver Cord Extended Edition, the vinyl release, has 3 hidden tracks that I think we mentioned very briefly on our Silver Cord album discussion episode. They're entitled Space Junk, Plasma, and Embryo. Those are all really cool tracks. I love listening to them once in a while. They're available on YouTube, and I think it would really behoove them to bust those out live if they can, because that would be so much fun, and I think you could hear the crowd go absolutely wild if you're listening to a live stream or to the soundboard recordings, you know?
Yeah, I think there'd be a lot of people at those shows like confused and scratching their head for a minute though too, because there's probably so many people that haven't heard those tracks and maybe don't even know that they exist, but it would be cool for the people who know, those who know would enjoy the those deep cut secret songs there.
Yeah, and then also just my quick second part of this segment of my thoughts. Butterfly 3000. It's been discussed for so long now. Ever since that album dropped in 2021, most of these songs have been neglected live, with the exception of Shanghai, of course, which, as of this recording, they performed live 24 times. So they've kind of figured that one out. Interior People, they've brought out 3 times, although that's a little bit less focused on the electronic aspect. That's got a little more acoustic guitar going, to be fair. But none of the other tracks on Butterfly 3000 have ever been performed live. There have never been any sound check appearances of those recorded, so I think this is the time, Joe, that they need to start busting out those Butterfly 3000 songs.
Oh yeah, that's one of the first things I thought about when writing down my sort of hopes and predictions for all these electronic rave shows, is that I just need to hear some more Butterfly 3000. I would love some fresh debuts of never-before tracks. As you mentioned, Shanghai and Interior People more recently were the only 2 that have ever been played live. My number 1 from that album that I want to hear, and I think a lot of people would agree with me, is Catching Smoke.
Yeah.
I mean, that would just be so damn fun, man. Like, Catching Smoke is such a dancey, probably the most kind of upbeat song of that whole album. That would be so much fun. But to shout out a couple other tracks from that album in particular, I think Dreams and Blue Morpho would also be amazing. A little more on the slower, softer side, but they have such a cool, just layered soundscape that those songs create. And actually, hinting ahead to our later Halloween segment that we want to do, Blue Morpho is quite kind of creepy and eerie sounding too. And I think that would be really cool to hear live, kind of break up the more energetic, dancey songs in between somewhere.
Yeah, okay, so those are our wishes kind of put out there into the universe, and as we know, King Gizzard, regular listeners of this podcast, so there you go. Do with that what you will, guys. That's our list of demands and desires. Please take them. We want to hear them. But yeah, that's kind of covering, at least what I had kind of jotted down here, the 2 major kind of electronic-focused albums that the band has put out so far. There are also, of course, like the one-offs or the outliers, like I mentioned Intrasport a little bit earlier, which is on KG, and that's kind of the weirdo outlier on that otherwise more traditional rock-oriented microtonal album. And then there's Made in Timeland, which, I don't expect them to play either of those kind of extended jams off that album in full in any way, but maybe there are some certain loops or riffs or whatever they might incorporate as part of the mix to some of these shows. Who knows? But yeah. Dude, there are just so many different possibilities, but as I see it, even within those kind of already electronic-focused on the studio album iterations, they already have so much to play with. That's without even getting too far into the more rock-oriented sounds being rearranged yet. Yeah,
and you know what? While having this discussion and while you were talking, I just thought of a couple more that I didn't even write down, but
okay.
We could go back to Fishing for Fishies, which is mostly a blues rock album, but there's 2 songs at the end of that, Acarine and Psy Boogie, which are completely electronic. And those, oh my God, I don't know if they've ever done Acarine live. I know they've done Psy Boogie, I'm pretty sure, but it's rare and it's been a long time. So yeah, those are 2 as well that could fit right in there with sort of these outlier electronic tracks on some of their previous albums. Oh, and you know what? Another one I have written down as well, Superposition from Gumboot Soup.
Oh,
that's another
hell yeah.
fully, very, heavily synth-based electronic song that would be cool as hell as well. So there's quite a bit, when you think of their electronic music, you think like, oh, okay, Butterfly is sort of a blend of like electronic and kind of alt indie rock, and then you have the obvious Silver Cord is their real, full analog synth album. But they have this nice variety of electronic songs sprinkled throughout a lot of their discography. So there's a lot of stuff that they can pull from there, as well as, like you said, doing some more of the transformations of taking rock songs and blending them and transforming them into this electronic synth table setting.
I am so glad you brought up Fishing for Fishies, because I know a lot of our focus on this show anytime that album comes out is that they need to play the title track live, and we are far from alone in believing that. But yeah, Ackery and Boogie, of course, they have kind of the electronic arrangement. Side Boogie has been played live 38 times, apparently. I had no idea that was the case.
Way more than I would have guessed.
Yeah. However, looking at the dates, it has not been played since shortly before COVID fucked everything up. February 21st of 2020 in Melbourne was the last live performance of that. And it's like all 2019 and 2020 for that one. Ackery has actually gotten 14 live performances, each of those in 2019, one of which was actually in Philly. So,
okay, I stand corrected. Ackery has been played, but
yeah, so I guess
we got to bring them back though.
Yeah. So I guess there is a pedigree there, some precedent there. I guess I think that basically means there's no excuse not to play those at some point during those upcoming rave sets. But yeah, those are kind of the pre-existing electronic tracks that I think are all sort of on the board as options for the band to play with, and they're going to do what they're going to do. Being the borderline debatable jam band, I know that's kind of the ongoing argument, are they a jam band or not? That's besides the point right now. Point right now that I'm trying to make is that they can jam this in so many different directions and not necessarily play one full song straight through and then go into the next one. They're gonna put one song right into the middle of a longer form one and do little teases, and veteran fans of this band know what's up. They know how this works. They're going to take things in all sorts of wacky directions, and we're inevitably going to see on social media just everybody's mind getting blown, like, whoa, I never expected them to do XYZ,
So on top of all these songs of theirs that are already electronic, or at least heavily feature electronic and synth elements, I also have a decent list here of songs, non-electronic songs, more rock-focused songs that I think could translate really nicely into electronic versions live during this tour. Before I start reading some of those off, I just have some general notes of hopes that I have for these rave shows, because, on top of just the music, there's a lot of other things I had in mind about how they're pulling it off and presenting it and all of that. So here's just a couple things for me that I hope they do. One of those is I would love to see them blend songs together. And Spenser, you kind of touched on how they already kind of do that. They are kind of a quote unquote jam band, or at least some might define them that way. And so that's not something that's totally foreign to them. But when I think live electronic music, I think of artists like one of my favorite artists of all time, Daft Punk, who have a very famous tour and a famous live album, Alive 2007, in which I think that's just a masterpiece in live electronic music and live albums in general. It is my favorite live album of all time. The way that they masterfully blended a bunch of their songs from all different eras of their music, different albums, sort of together. There'd be a beat from one and then a melody or vocals from another, just seamlessly flowing in and out of each other. Yeah. So I think King Gizz could do really well taking some note from albums and artists like Daft Punk and like that Alive 2007 record, and blending their songs together, playing one part of this song and then singing some other lyrics from another. As I said, they kind of already do that in the rock setting a little bit, but I think that would be really cool for this. And another thing is I really hope they put a heavy focus on the visuals on top of just the music, because in my opinion, there's nothing particularly exciting about watching 5 men stand around a table turning knobs and shit. So I feel like visually when Nathan comes out, it's not the most exciting thing to look at. I think it's a lot more fun to watch them in their rock element with Cavs going apeshit on the drums, and the other guys running around stage with their guitars, and or we've talked a lot about how Ambrose, during his vocal lead songs, he'll kind of run around the stage and do all kinds of stuff. I think that's really fun. But when they bring out Nathan, other than Cavs, he's still on his drums or on that electronic kit, but the other guys are just kind of standing around the table, and they might be kind of dancing and grooving, especially Stu. He's always, he can't stand still, so he's usually doing something. But I think I think it would really help and really add to it if they put a heavy focus on just the visuals of the overall stage production, like the set design of the stage, the lighting, and some unique visuals happening on. There's usually a screen behind them, so something on there as well. I think it would be really cool and exciting to see them do something unique with the overall look of everything. What do you think about all that, Spencer?
Yeah, okay, thinking outside the box, I love it, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, Joe, because I think there does need to be something a little more visually enticing going on during the electronic portion of those shows, and so that's something they could also kind of test the waters with during these upcoming rave sets, where they have all these crazy flashing lights and weird patterns and stuff going on to kind of keep the energy abuzz in the audience. Because, like you said, it's not always the most visually interesting thing to watch five guys kind of turn knobs and flip switches and move cables around, whatever the hell it is they do. That's not always the most exciting thing to look at. I know Kraftwerk fans would disagree. That's another band I love, but I couldn't imagine going to a live show with that part of it in mind. So, I think you're really onto something. I think that could be like a huge difference maker if they do kind of go wild with the light show.
Yeah, awesome. Glad you agree with me there. And, I'm glad I had that thought, because that's, we focus so much on the music, but, a live show, a concert, you're there watching the band. It's very visual as well. So I really appreciate when artists put a lot of work into just their actual stage and set design and everything on top of just having a great show and playing great music. With those couple general hopes and ideas for the general layout of the show, I think now I'm ready to get into some of my hopes or predictions for what songs they could do great electronic versions of. What non-electronic, more rock-focused songs I think would really kick ass in this rave setting. Now, Spencer, you mentioned to me that you don't necessarily have like a real organized list of these, but I'm sure you still have some in mind. So I'll read off some of mine, and you can kind of chime in and give your thoughts, or maybe give alternatives. If I name a song from one album and you think there might be another one that could be a better fit, feel free to jump in at any point.
Okay.
But I'm going to start off with saying I need some EDM versions of their metal tracks big time. I love hard-hitting, heavy electronic music that you can really like bang your head to. So I think this would be so good. Just to name a couple potential candidates, I think Motor Spirit, Witchcraft would be great. Superbug, potentially. Out of all the stuff on Rat's Nest, that one's a little harder to imagine, but I could see that one kind of being a little dancey maybe. And maybe also just going to some of their other non-exclusive metal albums. Maybe something like The Great Chain of Being could be cool. Any of those other ones. But I think more than anything, the Petro stuff stands out to me, like Motor Spirit and Witchcraft. And maybe part of that is the fact that album kind of goes hand in hand with the Silver Chord, and so there's already a little bit of that connection there. The extended versions of some of the Silver Chord tracks have sort of little melody elements or lyrics from songs from Petro, so there's already a connection there. So I think they could easily work something like that in.
Okay, yeah. And to kind of branch off of your evaluation of what metal tracks might sound good, the first one I have in mind is maybe a little bit low-hanging fruit because they already did sort of take in this direction, but Flamethrower with the outro portion, I want to hear more of that. It builds such a crazy crescendo at the end of that wildly violent, crazy-ass heavy metal album. I want to hear like a long Nathan jam centered around that, and then like maybe like try and incorporate more of the song Flamethrower proper into it somehow. How possible that actually is, I don't know. But that one, and then another metal track that come to mind is Mars for the Rich. That's another one of those like kind of easier to sing along to, easier to kind of tap your foot and bob your head to, that I think would be just ripe for the picking for an electronic composition. Yeah, I don't know what more I can say on that other than those are kind of two of my more prominent ideas, at least when it comes to the metal side of the band, what I might like to see them translate to the table. I'm scrolling through their discography right now on Tidal because, much friendlier platform for artists, of course, as the world has learned lately. And just looking through their discography, it's just like overwhelmed. It's like decision paralysis, they can go in so many different directions. I will, I guess, rule out the majority of the microtonal tracks, most likely just being realistic. I don't know how many of those are very easy to execute in an electronic sense, with the microtonal instruments being the way they are.
Yeah, you know what? I actually made a note, microtonal stuff, question mark, in my notes, because this is something I wanted to touch on, because to my knowledge, I mean, other than Intrasport, obviously that's the one kind of dancey electronic song that they have done live. That's sort of that weird outlier off of KG. They haven't done any other electronic versions of their microtonal songs, but I think that they could actually do it, because I have memory of us discussing some of the microtonal albums before, and there being members of the band credited on those albums with playing microtonal synthesizer. Like, I remember seeing that phrase, microtonal synthesizer, come up in album credits before. So as far as I know, they have the tools to do it. There's some of that on all the microtonal albums, as well as a couple of the weird outlier microtonal tracks from Sketches of Brunswick East, like The Book comes to mind. I believe that's sort of a microtonal melody on that synthesizer there. So I feel like they actually could do it. It's just a question of what songs would fit the best. That's a little harder to determine, I think.
Yeah. And just in addition to those songs I mentioned already that I think might be possible, and then I really hope I'm wrong about the microtonals, and I hope you're correct in your evaluation that may be on the table after all. I am curious to see what they might be able to do with some more older songs, like, more, I say more because they already did it with Slow Jam 1, as we mentioned earlier. What might they be able to do with some songs off of Quarters? Could God Is in the Rhythm finally make its long-anticipated return in this context?
Oh, I wrote that down too.
could they fuck with The River electronically? Like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, those are two I wrote down. So, The River is a staple. That is a crowd favorite at live shows, and played a very many times, and we are fortunate enough to get to hear that one actually twice in Philly, both with the orchestra this year and before without it. But The River, I mean, that's a huge legendary song, but it is also a beast of a song with so many different sections and everything that it might be tough to pull off. Although if they can do it, people would eat that shit up and love it. And, God Is in the Rhythm. That's one of the beautiful songs that hasn't been played since 2018. I know me and many others are really hoping for the return of that someday. I was really hoping they could bust that out at one of the orchestra shows, which didn't happen in the States, but there's still time. There's still 9 more orchestra shows to go, and who knows if they'll ever do that again after this year. So there's still time for that to maybe make an appearance either orchestrally or electronically. I think would be gorgeous either way.
Yeah, and I think we should also keep in mind that aside from the orchestral shows, there are the 4 rock shows coming up on this last leg of the tour, that when they bring Nathan out for the electronic portions of those shows, there could always be, a little experimentation with, I don't know, let's say where Joey steps away from the table and picks up his guitar and starts doing a little guitar accompaniment like he did during a couple of the silver chord tracks in Philly in 2024 when we were there. He's done that a couple of other times too, and I know the electronic thing, that's largely his baby and Stu's kind of, but he's shown that he can make it kind of a pretty cool jam, and I think, I want to say it's Set, where he did that, kind of stepped away with his guitar and let the other guys kind of take the reins on the synths after that. There are numerous possibilities with that as well.
Yeah, that was one thing I was curious about too. And being that these are deemed as rave shows, I'm kind of leaning more towards the idea that they will not have any guitars with them, anything other than Cav's electronic kit and obviously Nathan with all the synths hooked up. I get the feeling we're not going to see any guitar. However, who knows? Maybe they'll have a couple backstage, and for particular songs want to add guitar elements in with the synthesizers. I don't know, but that'll be interesting to see if that's the case.
Yeah. Well, that's more so why I was saying for the four rock dates, in case I didn't specify, for those remaining rock shows that are on this leg of the tour. That's okay. But just to clarify, that's what I had in mind for the rock shows. The portions where they do bring out Nathan, that might be an option.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'll offer another possible thing. I don't think they're going to bring Nathan out for those shows. I mean, maybe
really?
they will, but the fact that they're doing all these rave shows already, I don't know. I mean, they'll already have it all together, like all of Nathan and all their guitars and everything. They're going to have all of it. I hope they have enough trucks and everything. That's a shitload of equipment they're going to be hauling around all over Europe and whatnot. But yeah, okay, maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. I'm really curious to see. You know, there's no way to know until we see it. But maybe they will still bust out Nathan, do kind of that rock and electronic blend that we've seen them do a handful of times, like you described.
If I can add one more specific song that I'd like to see them attempt again in this case, they've tried it a couple times before and it mostly didn't go according to plan. I want to see them execute Gandhi in a more fully realized way because they've tried it at a couple of shows, and I remember listening to a particularly eclectic set at the Boston show from last year, which I think you listened to not long ago also. There are a couple kind of deep cuts and weird ones at the beginning.
Yeah.
I particularly liked that version of Gandhi, although it was a little messy in a couple of places, and I recently, just by chance, was scrolling through the podcast X feed, and somebody in the Gizz community on that platform said, "Oh, just listen to the St. Louis 24 or whatever it was show," and now I realize why they haven't played Gandhi much live, and that was one of the very few times I've listened to a live performance by the band and just kind of thought to myself, because it was rough. Like you could hear them kind of trying to get things going, and there were still a couple of pretty impressive, fun stretches of the song. But that's like one of those monkeys on their back, you know. That's kind of one of those little buggers that they need to work out. And once they do, it's going to be so refreshing for both the fans and the band themselves to finally execute Gandhi live.
Yeah. I don't think I've listened to that St. Louis show, but I have heard the Boston show, and there's a lot of great stuff on that one. I loved the fact that they played Gandhi. I think it's a great song, and I think it's great live, but or at least has great live potential. But I do remember that being a little messy. I don't even know if I want to go listen to the St. Louis one now after hearing your description of
my
that.
glowing review.
I'm a little scared. Yeah. I can't let my perfect image of them be tainted at all in my mind. So I don't know, but yeah, that's another one that could be great if they could really nail it. Just my final couple songs I have written down here of great potential rave show versions that they could do. I wanted to name a couple songs from Sketches because there is a lot of synth, a lot of electronic elements throughout that album, and it's such a weird, quirky album that you don't get a lot of live performances of those songs these days. Occasionally they do, like You Could Be Your Silhouette is one that I think is more popular for them to play, but some of them that I think could go great in the rave setting, I think maybe Tezita could be really cool. Spider and Me I think would be really fun. These are just a couple of my favorite songs too from that album, so maybe that's why I'm going with those. And also one that they do play live from time to time that could be really cool, fully just all analog synthed out on Nathan, would be The Book as well, which I think I mentioned that song earlier as one of those kind of like the microtonal synth kind of sound. So I think that one could kick ass as well. I love all three of those.
Yeah, The Book definitely would belong in that setting. Obviously, I think that's one of the easier choices, I think, ultimately, from the rest of the studio discography. What if they did, just totally going off the rails here, what if they did something totally chill, like maybe The Spider and Me, and then just totally scared the hell out of people with A Journey to Shell after that? Just decided, because we fucking
right
can.
Into that. Yeah. Go right into that. Like have like the Spider Me all pretty, and then just like a beat drop at the end of it. It just goes fucking nuts. Like it just. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. It's like an alarm in that song to scare the shit out of everyone.
Holy fuck.
Just one more final one for me to name off my list here. Again, there are so many that you could choose from. And by the way, if we haven't named any songs that you think would be great for these rave sets, send us a message or an email and let us know what would be some of your picks of songs you would love to hear played electronically during these rave shows. We would love to hear from you and get some more thoughts and perspectives on all of that from you guys. But my final one to name here, we touched on earlier how they have done electronic versions of Synths from Paper Mache before, but I actually think there's another song on that album that could work a lot better and be a little more upbeat and fun. I think Trapdoor would be really cool as an electronic song. Like, it's so like kind of bouncy and fast paced, and I'm just picturing like a heavy kick drum, just like do 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 do, like a rave, like a real rave, like you're in a club or something, and just like trap do with the synths and shit going crazy. And I don't know, man, I could really picture something there.
Yeah, I really could imagine that being a big hit. I don't know how many other artists, if any others, do it live like Cavs does, where he plays kind of the traditional drum kit with much of the electronic portions of these shows, but it just adds such a cool human touch, I think, as opposed to what the electronic kit would feel like, which I believe is a lot of people's main quibble with Silver Cord, at least the studio album. So I think with Cavs' rhythmic touch and just that traditional drum kit, that something like Trapdoor, oh my god, that would go so hard. And if any of you listeners are attending these shows, I know for a fact a couple of folks who have reached out months ago are, please reach out and let us know if you have any ideas or wishes or desires at what you think they should play, what you hope to hear, whether it's in the rave set, which obviously we spend most of our time talking about, but maybe what you might hope to hear at some of the rock shows, maybe a couple of bust outs you're expecting or hoping for. Like we said, 22 total dates coming here at the tail end of this 2025 tour. Lots of exciting possibilities. So whether it's leading up to the show that you're attending or after the show, if you want to react to what they did or didn't play, we want to hear all that. So just be sure to reach out to us, DM or comment on a post or email us. We want to hear it all.
Yeah, with the amount of shows that are coming up, and from the sort of the analytics that we could see from our show of different countries that people have listened to our podcast in and whatnot, I think there's a good chance that someone out there listening to this is going to one of these shows at least. So please let us live vicariously through you and reach out and tell us all about it, because I think that would be so much fun to just sort of get the perspective of someone who's there, sort of just the vibe and the overall energy of that experience. It could be any of the shows really, but especially if you're going to any of those rave shows, we really, really want to hear about those and get to touch on them and read some of your messages about it on a future episode would be great. So before we move on to our spooky Halloween segment that we're going to do here, I had sort of a last minute addition of a little thing I wanted to touch on, and maybe we can go back and forth and speculate about. But last night, I came across a post on the KGATLW subreddit page from user GodBlessChina412 with the caption, all caps, new KGLW Nathan album, ! And and that caught my eye because I'm like, wait, what the hell are they talking about? And the photos in the post, there are two screenshots, both taken from Instagram. The first one posted by Edith Kenny Smith, which you might that name might stand out to you. You might know her. She's actually the sister of Ambrose. And in case you didn't know this as well, she is the wife of Joey. So if that's news to you, you're welcome. Yeah, Ambrose and Joey are actually brothers-in-law. Joey married Ambrose's sister, which is really interesting. And I kind of heard stuff about that before, and I was kind of confused on, wait, who's married to whose sister and what? And I was kind of confused about it, but I did just a little bit of digging to be able to come to that conclusion. She has, I guess, two different Instagram pages. One is a more personal one where she has photos of her and Joey and their child as well, and just really cute like family pictures, and her and Ambi together, pictures of them with Broad, their dad, as well, which is really cool. But I guess she has this other page that's specifically dedicated to her photography work. It seems like she does a bit of photography for some bands, some behind the scenes photos of the Gizz guys, I guess, when she gets the chance to occasionally hang out with them while they're either recording, rehearsing, out on the road, and all that sort of stuff. So be sure to give her a follow if you want to see some of that stuff. She's got some great work on there. But the particular photo that this Reddit user took a screenshot of, this Instagram post from Edith, is a photo, a black and white image of Ambi and Joey together, and they're locked in on the synth table. They're both looking at it. It looks like they're kind of tweaking things, setting things up. And this isn't on stage, but it's like a very kind of regular looking room, like someone's house or like a hotel room or maybe even a green room backstage at a venue. And her caption reads, Gizz recording / Joey and Ambi. And one thing real quick that I need to make a side note on, she spells Ambi Ambie.
Thank you for bringing this up.
And I think a lot of us, for a long time, including myself, have always spelled it Amby.
Yeah.
So I guess AMBIE, because this is his sister we're talking about here. I think she would know. So, yeah, I guess we've been spelling it wrong this whole time. I'm going to have to take her spelling for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We need to adjust that spelling. Yeah. Like I said, that's officially canon. We need to change our ways immediately. But I don't know if I'm sorry if I cut you off here, Joe, but I want to react to a little bit of what you just said here.
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
Kind of recounting a bunch of this Reddit post. I feel like we already heard some rumblings and whispers of, they are or most likely are working on an electronic album for number 28 next, but it's kind of all getting jumbled up in my brain, like what was rumors and what was actually true, like what one of the band members may have said in an interview. For the life of me, I was trying to search for an interview that I was reading transcribed somewhere. Totally forget the publication, totally forget the context and everything, but I swear I remember Ambrose saying that they were kind of visiting this concept of an electronic album, but that right around the time the European residency tour, I think, started, they were just like, we need to rethink some things, we need to tweak some things. It might be off the table, it might take a different form, but I could not find it for the life of me. So, listener, if you can find that anywhere, please send it our way, because I want to make sure I'm not going insane, first of all.
Yeah, please.
And second, it'll kind of help retrace the breadcrumbs, to refigure out where we might be. But yeah, dude, with I think this is rife for speculation also, just the fact that they are probably going to be toying around with Nathan quite a bit leading up to these upcoming tour dates, with all these rave tour dates coming up, because they were hoping to get together with their synth technician and soup things up even further and build things more in anticipation for these tour dates. But there's always going to be the question between now and then of, okay, what's like prepping for the live show and what is like potentially working on this rumored next album? And is it maybe an amalgamation of the two in all these photos? Like, are they kind of coming together at the same time? Who the hell knows?
Yeah, and it's just, I find it interesting, and I think the only little tiny detail here that's worth, even speculating and getting the idea that they're recording another electronic album off of just this photo is the fact that she writes Gizz recording in the caption, Gizz recording / Joey and Ambi.
That's true.
And by all accounts, it's a recent image. I mean, this actual Instagram post is only from 1 day ago, so this was just posted, and people are immediately speculating about it. Seeing the word recording in there is like, oh shit, are they doing another synth album? Oh man, but yeah, in that Reddit post that I saw with this Instagram screenshot, it's a post within a post, but in that Reddit post there is a second image actually in there, and this one I don't think has merits as much discussion or speculation really, but it's just a screenshot of a story post from Ambrose, which is a photo of a whole mess of synths and wires all over the place with Sandstorm by Darude playing, which is a classic. But yeah, with that second photo, I think there's an easy and simple explanation for that, and I think they're about to embark on this big rave tour thing, and I think it's just kind of a snapshot of the preparation that's going into it, and Ambi kind of organizing the synth stuff before they hit the road. I don't think there's really any more to that, but that on top of this image of him and Joey and his sister saying that this is Gizz recording is kind of interesting. She actually posted a second photo with a similar caption shortly after this one. It's a cool photo of calves behind the drum kit, and this one, the description just says Gizz recording / Mickey, which is of course a nickname for him that a lot of them use. So that's two posts right there that says Gizz recording within the last 24 hours, at least as of us recording this episode right now. So, yeah, maybe there's something going on there. I mean, they put out so much damn music, I wouldn't be surprised to learn at any point that they were recording something. So I don't think this is really that big of news, but maybe it's a little hint that we're going to get some more synthy electronic stuff on number 28, whenever that eventually does come one day.
Yeah, very well could be. I will say, just to kind of temper expectations, I would absolutely not anticipate anything for the rest of this calendar year.
Oh, yeah.
But once the calendar flips to 2026, I'm not saying there's, going to be a new album January 1st or 2nd, but, who knows? This is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard after all. All right, Joe, you ready to get spooky?
Yeah, I'm ready to get spooky. So, as mentioned earlier, this being our final episode before Halloween, we wanted to have a little on-theme segment with that. So we are going to go back and forth, naming what we believe to be the most spooky and eerie songs of the Gizz catalog, whether that's the music itself sounding unsettling or the lyrics describing creepy things. Spencer, you want to start things off for us?
Yes. All of Murder of the Universe. End of story, end of segment, end of show. Actually,
all right,
no.
That's it. Everybody, thanks for listening.
That's not fully true. Obviously, I have plenty more songs to opine on here, but I'm actually going to make the argument not even all of Murder of the Universe. I did like a brief re-listen to chunks of that album earlier. In full disclosure, that's not an album I actually go back to very much. But the first two sections... Certainly, I know. That'll need to change. At least the first two sections, the first two chapters, I guess, if you will, of Murder of the Universe. You know, you have that minor key everywhere, throat singing from Stu. So, you know, the Altered Beast, Alter Me's, and the Balrog and the Lord of Lightning in the middle, those absolutely spooky, just dark, and you can picture just literal lightning flashes everywhere, and altogether just haunted and grotesque. I would make the argument, though, that the third chapter with Hantayumi and the vomiting and everything, it's so unserious and hilarious, and I don't want to go too deep into it because we haven't covered this album on the show yet. But I think I don't know. I think that third and final chapter centering around Hantayumi and the literal murder of the universe, I equate that with more like a really intentionally bad 80s horror movie compared to what's actually scarier in the earlier parts. Yeah,
or leaning more into like the weird like sci-fi kind of thing. Like it's more sci-fi to me than like horror or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I think you got a point with the second section as well, but I got to say more than anything, the whole first Altered Beast suite is straight up like horror movie kind of shit. Like I think there's nothing more obvious than that. To go to another totally different track, and moving back to actually a song I already talked about earlier that I think would be cool for the rave set, but I gotta bring up something from Paper Mache, and I think a lot of the lyrics and subject matter from that album could be appropriate for this, regardless of how chill and pretty and nice sounding they are. We've hit on this multiple times that album is like the pinnacle of Gizz doing the pretty happy catchy songs with dark fucked up lyrics. But I think just going off of the sound of it especially and some of the subject matter, I've got to name Trapdoor over all of them. It's spooky.
Yep, I had that one on my list too, and definitely has the spooky sound, and one of the few tracks, in fact, might be the only track, in fact, on that album where the spooky instrumentation actually matches up with the creepy lyrics.
Yes.
So we definitely matched up on that one.
And the music video adds to it as well. It's like a haunted castle and like Stu with like a sheet over his head and like candles floating around and all kinds of weird shit. I love how like low budget that music video is, because it's going back to the earlier days when they didn't have the budget they have now to do bigger stuff, and it just has such a charm to it. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely harkens back to an earlier era of the band. Okay, let's move on in our naming of the spooky tracks from the catalog. Easy one here. Satan Speeds Up.
Oh, yep. I had that as well. That one's right in the name.
Yeah, obviously the title and the initial sounds that you hear on that song. You're like, oh God, what did I get myself into if you're listening to that song for the first time?
Yeah, regardless of Satan being in the name and in the lyrics, just that melody itself is so like dark and unsettling sounding. It sounds like there's just doom and gloom coming for you. It's definitely on that eerie side of things.
All right, what do you have next on your list, Joe?
Speaking of Doom, you know what? I should mention this one next. Doom City, I think, could be kind of fitting. That one, obviously, that whole album, Flying Microtonal Banana, most of, if not all, the songs have sort of like an environmental theme about climate change and all this sort of stuff, and I think that's where Doom City sits as well. But if you look at it with a more like objective look on the lyrics and the sound of it and stuff, you could look at it as like just like a apocalypse kind of setting, like end of the world, a city crumbling and terrible things happening. So I think that could fit into there as well.
On a similar note, but a different genre within the band's work, witchcraft.
Oh,
I mean, the theme, obviously, the title, obviously, and all the imagery within. Yeah, it's just like 100% spooky. It may even be in the top 5 for my money.
Yeah. Witchcraft was the very first one that came to mind for me, of course, and I'm just sort of jumping around my list randomly, but yeah, that's I think the most obvious one right there in the name. I think a lot of Petro could actually work to be on theme with this a bit, like maybe Gila Monster as well.
Sure.
But yeah, none of them quite like Witchcraft. To stick with the metal theme here, I'll name this one next, Hell. Enough said. Do I need to say anything else? Hell.
You could even make a case for attaching Self-Immolate to that as well, because I actually had on my list Self-Immolate / Hell, because it almost feels like you can't put one down without the other, you know?
No, yeah, they're kind of two pieces of the pie. I feel like there's a lot of songs like that where the last two, or a lot of albums like that, I should say, that the last two tracks are very connected and like together make up the finale of the album. Because yeah, Self-Immolate into Hell, pure thrash gold right there.
Going a little off the beaten path here, actually very much off the beaten path, there is the incredible classic Dawn of Eternal Night, the vinyl exclusive track of Petrodragonic Apocalypse. For those who don't own for those who don't own the vinyl version, it is available on YouTube, and I did this last year around this same time, and I'm going to do it probably this weekend. I'm going to have the house to myself this weekend for a portion of it. Just like darken the house, put on a couple of candles, put in my headphones, and listen to Dawn of Eternal Night. For those who don't have for those who've never heard it, I guess, it has Leah Senior and just like environmental ambient sounds and spooky little noises and creepy synthesizer as she tells the story. And it's just like this, you know, you want to, if you are in the mood to spook yourself, it's perfect. Maybe don't listen to it at 3 a.m. right around Halloween. That could be treading on some dangerous territory. But it's just one of those like perfectly scary, unsettling, but cool songs.
Flowing into the album that came after that one, I wanted to pick one off of the Silver Cord, and I came up with Swan Song. I think that's the darkest and sort of most unsettling sounding of all of that record. That sort of like dark, growling, distorted, and dissonant synth. You know, obviously that's a fun, upbeat song, but it's very dark at the same time, and there's a lot of themes in it, like, you know, the line "Death Comes." So I think you could kind of fit it into this spooky category and have it on your Halloween playlist.
I think it'll really be a shame if they don't incorporate Swan Song into the first show of the RAVE tour coming up on Halloween when they play the Aviva Studio in Manchester in the UK. That needs to be in there because, yeah, like you said, it's almost like if you want to have a rave on Halloween, that's like the keynote of the evening.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I wasn't even thinking about that, but I really hope they have put some of these thoughts into their set with it being Halloween and everything. Of like, you know, can we do some of these dark, kind of eerie sounding tracks? We'll see. Kind of turn that whole show into like a Halloween party of its own.
Next up, I had The Hungry Wolf of Fate. It has that doom rock feel to it, kind of that downtrodden, foreboding feel. And of course, you got to have the tritones.
Yep. That was one of mine as well. That's a great pick. And another one where there's a kind of a, like one of those classic kind of Halloween imagery, a wolf, right? Like a howling wolf or a werewolf or something. It's right in the name. So yeah, I had a feeling we'd have some overlap on some of these more obvious ones. That was one of mine as well. To go off of that and name another one that has like a classic Halloween staple imagery right in the title, although I don't think the music really fits the vibe at all. But The Spider in Me, maybe. I mean, spider's in the name. The lyrics are obviously this very happy, pleasant thing about like a guy connecting with nature and, you know, appreciating the little critters around us that we share the earth with and whatnot. And I love that song very much. I think it's so sweet and fun, other than maybe like the guy moaning at the spider in kind of a weirdly sexual way. I don't know what's going on there.
Like that?
Yeah, you like that? Yeah. But anyway, I had to just throw that one out there just because of the name of it alone.
That's totally not the direction I expected you to go in. When you were saying, the name of this one makes it easy, the one I thought you were going to go with, the next one I have, is The Grim Reaper. I mean, maybe a little bit too on the nose, and perhaps a little bit too cheeky and funny and kitschy from Ambrose, which gives it its lovable charm. But obviously, it still has that menacing riff. Dun, 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 dun. And the Grim Reaper, that's one of like the three like main characters, if you will, of the Halloween season.
Right, yeah. And I actually On top of Grim Reaper, I had a couple other potential picks from Omnium as well. Sadie Sorceress I threw in there as well. I think that's fitting, describing like a witchy kind of woman. Could fit in there, right, with like Grim Reaper or witchcraft with that sort of theme. And just for the name alone, again, I threw Garden Goblin in as well. Obviously, we know it's about Cookie's dog, Cookie Dog's dog. But, just for the name alone, I threw that in there. Goblins being another like kind of monster imagery kind of thing. And actually, just to go back to sketches for a second, on top of naming Spider and Me just for the name alone, another one that I talked about earlier and that I think would fit in with the actual sound of it is The Book, I think, with that kind of creepy, dark synth once again, and some of the things they talk about, the religious theme, sort of the darker side of like religion and whatnot, I think could fit in as well.
Yeah, I think I'll bring my Bluetooth speaker out into the neighborhood and save that for when this guy doesn't actually exist, but for when somebody kind of comes around the neighborhood on the sidewalk in between droves of kids coming for candy, this guy peddling his religious pamphlets and materials. I'll have that song ready to go for that situation.
Yeah,
that?
There you go.
Okay, this one may be in name only, not so much in the instrumentation, but this is me. If you know me, new listeners, I'm afraid of wasps. Big Fig Wasp is very scary. It's the scariest of them all.
Yeah, that was, that wasn't one I actually wrote down, but I was trying to think, like, there's definitely a handful from Nonagon that I think could be very fitting. Big Fig Wasp for you. You hate big stingy bugs, and that's understandable. I actually went with People Vultures, I think, because that's just like a weird, scary, monstrous imagery. I think of the music video of the giant vulture with all the band members embedded into it. There's definitely a weird kind of creepy thing going on there, and obviously vultures are like kind of a sign of death as well, because they are scavengers. They eat, dead animals, whether it be roadkill or other animals that have died naturally. They eat that dead, that yummy dead meat. So, so that's, I think could be kind of fitting. But another one from Nonagon that I had to name is Wawa, because that song is full of descriptions of things. It mentions the devil as well. And then there's lyrics like a bat with 16 eyes, a craving for your blood. There's another lyric I love, wolves with whips and 40 goats with pitchfork sticks. So, God, that was hard to say. But yeah, there's lots of sort of spooky, kind of very hellish and Halloween-like imagery. I think that's super fitting for that.
Oh, boy. Okay, down to my last few, and I think you're down to your last few probably too, Joe.
Yeah.
See Me, I've always thought was a little bit spooky sounding with its main kind of Celesta melody. Dun, 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 dun. It has this creepy unsettlingness to it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe not as much in the lyrics and stuff, but it gives that same sort of feeling. Kind of similar to how the main melody at the beginning of The Book makes me feel. I think those are very comparable.
Very similar.
I have 3 more total and 2 more kind of fitting in with the synth and electronic elements. I threw Psy Boogie in there just for fun because it's got all these kind of freaky descriptions of Hentai Yumi and sort of how he's structured and his body of like mix of organs and wires and computer parts and whatnot. Like, I think that just kind of has this freaky and kind of like dark sounding feel to it, on top of being sort of dancey and fun as well. But I think it could be fitting for a party like that. And also Blue Morpho as my other sort of electronic pick. The subject matter of it, not so much, but Blue Morpho is just so eerie and unsettling sounding as well. Like, it always gave me this sort of creepy feeling about, like, I don't even know what. It's just Stu's like really high falsetto singing voice, like falling upwards through clouds. Like, it's kind of the spooky monotone falsetto voice and this just this lush like environment of synths and reverbs and everything. Yeah,
okay. You said 2 electronic songs in it. The one that I had here remaining on my list was neither of those. I put Gilgamesh. I'm surprised we kind of ended up skipping over that one earlier, but it does have a little more of that familiar menace to what we talked about with Swan Song. I would argue Swan Song has a little bit more, but Gilgamesh definitely has some of that menacing stomp and weightiness to it.
Yeah, totally.
Final couple that I have here, Superbug, which I think to me reached a new height when we heard this one performed live at Forest Hills, and Stu busted out the throat singing on one of the latter choruses. Ooh, that sent chills down my spine, literally. I'm not even joking. Yeah. And I just got into my happy place. His performance, his execution on that was so good. And in a slightly different haunting way, but still creepy nonetheless, the KGLW outro from the album
Oh my gosh,
LW.
how did I not think about that? How did I miss that one?
Which famously has the spookiest woo in the Gizz catalog. Woo!
Yes, it does. It literally has ghostly stew. Woo! And also the music video is fitting as well. It's like you're actually in hell with fire, and like, is there like skeletons with chains and shit like that? Like, it actually feels like you are trapped in hell. Yeah.
Yeah.
And hammers. Yeah, it's got all those like sort of industrial clanging sound effects throughout it. And wow, good one.
Whew.
My final one on my list is actually a real unique one. I went way back looking over some of their earliest released music to try to pick one out of there just for something different. And this is, again, just kind of from the name, but there's a little bit of lyrics that you could, I guess, adapt to mean something spooky. But I wanted to pick Bloody Ripper from 12 Bar Brews.
Whoa.
I don't know the exact meaning of the song. This isn't one that we've done a deep dive on yet. So, we will get to that eventually, do some of the really early Gizz music and talk about it. But listening back, the line, "All I want to do, sink my teeth in you," is repeated a couple times. And I think you could kind of twist that to whatever it's supposed to actually mean. It could be kind of construed as like a monster or a vampire or something, right?
I was going to say, break the garlic out, protect yourself.
Yeah. And obviously, Bloody Ripper, I think, is a sort of a reference to Jack the Ripper, right? The famous London serial killer from the 20th century. So.
And then I also had Phantom Island, notably the end portion of it, Ambrose's verse, where things really get kind of kicked into an extra gear and kind of come, kind of go sprinting to the epic finish of that song with the crazy guitar riffs and the orchestra still backing and the brass just going wild as Ambrose sings his nutso verse where everything's going wild and getting scarier by the second. That's another one that just belongs perfectly in the heart of a Halloween mix.
Okay, yeah, I didn't really think of anything off Phantom Island because most of it is a lot softer and prettier, but you got a point about some of it towards the end there for sure. All right, well, that's it for our lists of Gizz spooky Halloween songs that are out there. If you have any thoughts of any others we may have missed, please reach out to us and let us know what your picks would be for your King Gizzard Halloween party playlist. We hope you enjoyed and maybe put a little playlist together of your own with some of our suggestions and have fun with that as well. And and thanks so much for listening to us chat all about the upcoming tour. We're very excited. And again, if you're going to any of those shows, especially the rave shows, please reach out and let us know after those happen how they went, or ahead of time what you're excited to hear and what city you're seeing them in.
Yeah, we're excited for the continuation of the 2025 Couch Tour, and we sincerely hope those of you who are attending any of those shows that you have the time of your life and you enjoy. We can't wait to hear from you on your experiences. Now here on the show, it's time to jump into Most of What We Like.
Most of what we like.
Most of What We Like is a segment we do occasionally at the end of the show where we just touch on some other non-Gizz media that we're enjoying, whether that be other albums, artists, podcasts, books, movies, TV shows, any of that good stuff, just to give you a little touch of what else we've been into lately, and maybe you'll take some of our suggestions and check out some new stuff that you might dig as well. So Spencer, what's up for you first on Most of What We Like?
This is not verbiage you'll normally hear on this segment from me, but I am anxious and pissed off and frustrated at what I'm going to talk about here on this part. I'm watching the Major League Baseball.
That doesn't sound like most of what we like.
Well, it's
most of what we.
It's most of what I like when my team is winning. I'm watching the Major League Baseball postseason, and my Seattle Mariners are teetering on the brink of disaster right now. We're recording this episode just to pull back the curtain real quick. Recording this on Friday, October the 17th, and currently in the American League Championship Series, the Mariners and the Toronto Blue Jays are locked at 2 games apiece in a best-of-7 series. So for those of you who don't follow baseball, the Seattle Mariners are the team I grew up rooting for. I grew up in the Northwest, so they've always been my team, even though I live on the opposite coast now. The Philadelphia Phillies are kind of my local rooting interest. Basically, the Mariners need to win 2 more games against Toronto to reach baseball's biggest stage, the World Series. This is especially important because the Mariners are the only major league team of the 30 teams in the league that have never made it to the World Series. And just for reference, this franchise was established in 1977, so just about to reach that 50-year mark of no World Series appearances. This is a real albatross around the neck of the team, the fan base, and it needs to happen. They need those 2 more wins. And, I'm rooting hard for them no matter what. Game 5 is tonight on this Friday as we're recording. I really hope they can, get back on the right track. They won the first 2 games. Hopes were high, and then the Blue Jays just absolutely smoked them the last 2 games to tie the series. Joe, I'm nervous. I'm biting my nails. I hope they can pull it out. That's the only thing that's on my mind aside from Gizz, basically. Hopefully something a little less stressful for you, buddy.
Yeah, fair enough. I am also enjoying following along with the baseball playoffs. Of course, my Philadelphia Phillies were knocked out in the first round for their first round at least of the playoffs, and not making it any further. So I'm on your team now. Go Mariners. Go Seattle. Hoping for the best. And the Dodgers were the ones to knock the Phillies out. So and also it's looking like they're making a World Series comeback. They are on fire so far. So please, I hope your Mariners make it to the World Series, and I hope they fucking destroy the LA Dodgers to get revenge for what they did to the Phillies. So I'm rooting for you all the way there. As for me, non-sports related, actually getting back to music, and in particular, another Australian artist that I love, Stella Donnelly. She is a singer, songwriter, indie rock kind of artist, and also from Australia. And I've been following her for years. I actually think I might have mentioned her in this segment on the show before, but it's been a while. I think I gave a shout out to one of her albums that I really love. But she's got a new album called Love and Fortune that's coming out on November 7th that I'm very excited for. And so far, she's put out 3 singles. They are titled Year of Trouble, Feel It Change, and Baths. They are the recent singles from her upcoming album. I just think she's really great. Beautiful voice, really heartfelt music. Like a lot of, you could tell she's really writing from like personal experiences and just life stuff, and that I think is very relatable and heartfelt. And you just really feel the emotion and everything she puts into it is just incredible. And I didn't really know anything about her until I just by chance happened to be invited by a friend to go see her at this small club in Philly a few years back. I think it was like 2022 maybe. And I just went just for the sake of going to a show. The ticket was cheap, and I fell in love immediately. Her voice is incredible. Her whole band that she plays with is amazing. So if you're looking for another amazingly talented Australian artist to give some love to, check out Stella Donnelly, and follow along and check out her new album when it comes out.
Good stuff. Yeah, I'm looking forward to checking that out. You got me listening to Stella a couple years ago there, Joe. I haven't revisited her, unfortunately, anytime recently, but it might be time to get back into that. I really enjoy her sound. Yeah, me too. It's definitely very different from Gizz and from a lot of the other crazier shit that I listen to, but man, it's for me, it's my favorite, like driving on a rainy day kind of music. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Perfect for that sort of thing.
Okay, so that's been our episode on the upcoming RAVE tour, the upcoming continuation of the orchestral shows for Gizz, and a few upcoming rock shows sprinkled in throughout the UK, Europe, and Australia. And we also enjoyed, of course, talking about our spookiest Gizz songs. That was a fun discussion as well.
Yep.
As for what we're doing next here on the show, we don't know yet, and we would actually like your help in deciding on such. We only have a handful left of Gizz albums to discuss on the show, so we still have to do full album discussions on the following: Willoughby's Beach, 12 Bar Brews, Polygon Dwanaland, Murder of the Universe, Made in Timeland, and Laminated Denim. So by the time this episode comes out, I'm sure we'll have a post up on our socials, and we want you to vote on what album discussion you want us to do next. This quote-unquote poll, we'll kind of cull the results over the course of about a week, let everybody kind of get eyes on the post and make a decision, and then we'll kind of collect the results from all of our socials, any email submissions as well. We'll take it all, so don't get all excited if you're only on Instagram and you see one album ahead of the pack. You don't know what's going on the other platform if you're not looking. So we're going to kind of total those all up and kind of make a decision based on that. So yeah, we want your input. Look out for that post on social media by the time this episode comes out, and we'd like to hear what you think on where we should go next here on the show.
Yes, we are really excited to hear from all of you on your thoughts as to what you want to hear us discuss next, as well as your insights on all the wonderful things we talked about today. This was a fun non-album discussion episode today, but I think we're going to be back to business with that next time on the show. So stay tuned, reach out to us, answer those polls and everything we put out, and get your votes in, and we'll see what we're going to be talking about next time. As always, thank you for listening to Podagon Infinity, and thank you for keeping it weird and doing your part to spread the good word of the Gizz. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you in the next episode. Later, Gators. Woo!